The radical left's agendas are attacking your values. The conservatives like you haven't forgotten what this country was built upon. My friends, the Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard, to represent your values in the D.C. swamp. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the struggle because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. After the show, we kick off Labor Day weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Hope you have wonderful plans, or no plans, just relax. And as I was coming on the air 3 minutes ago, a court ruled that President Trump's most of his tariffs are illegal. So this will go straight to the Supreme Court. CNBC reporting. A federal appeals court ruled that most of President Trump's global tariffs are illegal, striking a massive blow to the core of his aggressive trade policy. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled that the law Trump invoked when he granted his most expansive tariffs does not actually grant him the power to impose those levies. Trump is all but certain to appeal the ruling to the Supreme Court. He will indeed. The Appellate Court paused its ruling from taking effect until October 14 in order to give the Trump administration time to go to the Supreme Court. White House did not immediately respond. The Trump administration has argued that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act empowers the president to effectively impose country-specific tariffs at any level if he deems them necessary to address a national emergency. A lower federal trade court in late May rejected that stance and struck Trump's base tariffs, including his worldwide reciprocal tariffs, unveiled in early April. But the Federal Circuit Court quickly paused the ruling while Trump's appeal played out. Now, we discussed that ruling. It's just amazing to me the power these courts have seized from the president, the power these courts have seized, period. You know, they talk about the presidential powers being expanded under Trump. But the greater danger, and it's a grave danger, is what the courts have done. And it is very problematic. Now, I have this decision in front of me as we speak, and they put it out tonight on a Friday. Let's see here. Give me a second. The government appeals a decision of the Court of International Trade setting aside 5 executive orders that impose tariffs on unlimited duration on nearly all goods from nearly every country in the world, holding that the tariffs were not authorized by the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, because we agree that the Act's grant of presidential authority to regulate imports does not authorize the tariffs imposed by the executive orders. We affirm. what they say. The case involves the extent of the president's authority under the act to regulate importation in response to a national emergency declared by the president. For many years, Congress has carefully constructed tariff schedules which provide for, in great detail, the tariffs to be imposed on particular goods. Since taking office, the court writes, President Trump has declared several national emergencies. In response to these declared emergencies, the president has departed from the established tariff schedules and imposed varying tariffs of unlimited duration on imports of nearly all goods from nearly every country with which the United States conducts trade. This appeal concerns 5 executive orders imposing duties on foreign trading partners to address these emergencies. And they go on. I'm going through and I'm reading extra fast. In response to the declared national emergency of the trafficking of opioids into the country and the ostensible failure of Mexico, Canada, China to meaningfully address this threat, the president imposed what this opinion refers to as trafficking tariffs. And they talk about those tariffs. They talk about each one of these executive orders is what they do. Let's see here. Just bear with me. On April 14, 2025, 5 small businesses, and they name them, brought suit before the Court of International Trade against the United States and various government officials in their official capacities, challenging the president's imposition of the reciprocal tariffs. And on April 23, 2025, Oregon and 11 other states brought suit before the same court against the United States and various government officials. On May 28, 2025, a 3-judge panel of the court granted summary judgment to the private plaintiffs and state plaintiffs in a consolidated order, holding that both the reciprocal tariffs and the trafficking tariffs exceeded the president's authority under the act. The government appealed both cases the same day and moved to stay the injunction pending appeal. We consolidated the appeals, granted the government's motion to stay pending their resolution, and expedited briefing and oral argument. We also, sua sponte, decided to assign the case to the court en banc, meaning the whole court. The whole court. The court also concludes that these cases present issues of exceptional importance, warranting expedited en banc consideration of the merits in the first instance. And they go through, now I'm reading this for the first time with you, and they go through a long history. It's a long opinion, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm scrolling through very quickly here. Just stick with me. And what they're trying to do, obviously, here, as I quickly summary review this. Thank God I'm a fast reader, Mr. Producer, but I'm not reading it substantively. I'm just looking quickly at certain portions of it as I speak to you. It looks to be over 100 pages in length. And what they're basically saying is they've looked at the history of the statute, they've looked at the practice of the statute, they've looked at the practices of Congress, and that the president's actions exceed the authority. But I'll tell you what's interesting to me. Everything for me, when we look at the law, when we look at the courts, goes back to the Constitution of the United States. Goes back to the Constitution of the United States. The president is the head of the executive branch. He's mentioned in the Constitution. We call it a unitary executive branch, meaning it all reports to him. Same thing when it comes to classifying and declassifying information, that sort of thing. And so when it comes to trade policy, it's not that a president can do whatever he wants. But if a president believes that it is, even in a general sense, an emergency situation that exists, is he free to act, or does he have to have congressional approval? Now, if you've listened to this program, even over the period of the last 6 months, or if you read my book on power, there's a serious question whether Congress has the power to legislate in this area. You might say the Commerce Clause. The purpose of the Commerce Clause is to promote commerce between and among the states. But that said, does Congress have this kind of plenary power to pass legislation and so forth? That's a good question, too. Anyway, The trafficking tariffs make clear the president contemplated eliminating or lowering the tariffs if the country subject to the tariff took adequate steps concerning the specific identified threat. And the actions immediately following issuance of the tariffs confirm the proper focus of the tariffs on the underlying drug crime problem, talking about Mexico and Canada and China. Both Canada and Mexico's immediate steps designed to alleviate the illegal migration and illicit drug crisis through cooperative action, and China's failure to take such steps, evince their utility as such a bargaining chip. For the foregoing reasons, we respectfully dissent from the majorities. So the dissent is saying, hey, look, the president did set forth emergency circumstances involving these states, and they went through the various executive orders, including drugs coming into the country illegally, killing Americans, and the president using tariffs to try and force other countries to change their conduct, to change their behavior. And so the dissent is saying, at least in the part that I've just read, yes, the president has the authority to do it. And they go on, moving past ordinary statutory analysis. Is this boring, Mr. Producer? I don't think so. All right, good. Moving past ordinary statutory analysis, plaintiffs invoke the major question doctrine. The major question. So the language of the act is undeniably broad on its face. It lists a host of powers, some such as prohibition and prevention, even more restrictive than the tariffing. In other words, even more restrictive than the president's actions. There's no suggestion that the act's specified authority must be exercised only for specific types of products or only for a narrow set of countries. The facially evident intent is to provide flexibility in the tools available to the president to address the unusual and extraordinary threats specified in a declared national emergency. This is not an ancillary, little-used backwater provision or a delegation outside the recipient's wheelhouse. The breadth is anything but surprising in the context here, as Justice Kavanaugh recently reiterated in explaining why the canon has not been applied in the national security or foreign policy context. He said the canon does not reflect ordinary congressional intent in these contexts because the usual understanding is that Congress intends to give the president substantial authority and flexibility to protect America and the American people. There's simply no common sense expectation in the present context involving emergencies touching foreign affairs that Congress was unlikely to be granting the authority at issue. The facial breadth in an emergency context makes the straightforward application of the statute's words hardly unheralded, quote unquote. They must be mocking the majority. For these reasons, we conclude that the essential premise for using the major questions doctrine to reject the claimed authority for the challenged actions is missing here. Congress very clearly made a broad delegation here, as in other emergency authority delegations. Whether to provide such delegations is certainly open to policy debate, as it carries obvious risks. We do not see the act as anything but an eyes-open congressional choice to confer on the president broad authority to choose tools to restrict importation when the Act's section standards are met. We therefore see no reason to pull back from the statutory conclusions we have reached. Plaintiffs argue the Act is an unconstitutional delegation of legislative authority to the president, that it violates the non-delegation doctrine. The Supreme Court has not ruled on this issue, though it has upheld action under the statute. All the courts of appeals to have considered the question have rejected such challenges. The general standard for determining whether Congress had unconstitutionally delegated. Now, this is actually quite perverse. We have an entire fourth branch of government where it could be said the Congress has unconstitutionally delegated its legislative authority to unelected bureaucrats. They say the general standard for determining whether Congress had unconstitutionally delegated the legislative power assigned to it by Article 1 of the Constitution requires two elements to be supplied. That is, an understandable statement of the general policy that the agency must pursue and understandable boundaries. That is, sufficient standards to enable both the courts and the public to ascertain whether the agency has followed the law. And the government suggests that, and it goes on here, I don't want to. The non-delegation doctrine polices what Congress has delegated to another branch, not to whom it has delegated the authority. Indeed, to distinguish between, in other words, the president versus the executive branch. I haven't read the rest of this. I'm reading it with you. But it's obvious what they concluded was it doesn't violate the non-delegation doctrine. It's a broad power. It's not really legislative in nature. And I would argue, as I have argued before, and I argue in my book on power, where does Congress get this power? Where does Congress get this power? From nowhere. Now, former federal prosecutors, law professors, they might tell you, well, of course they have the authority. They're the legislative branch, but the legislative branch was never intended to be able to legislate on all matters. If we really want to get to the crux of the matter, it would be a state matter. But when it comes to tariffs, we've had presidents as early as George Washington who's imposed tariffs without statutory, quote-unquote, authority. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Conservatives in every stage of life are faced with ever-increasing challenges to our values in the classroom, on campus, and at work. Prepare yourself with a solid understanding of our nation's founding principles in today's most important public policy debates. The Heritage Foundation created the Heritage Academy to help ensure that every conservative from any walk of life has the foundation and the tools needed to defend their values. This 8-week online fellowship includes policy lectures on the most pressing issues facing Americans today, live Q&As to learn from top experts in the conservative movement, and opportunities to connect with other conservatives around the country. Without conservatives grounded in truth and informed on the state of our nation, America as we know it cannot survive. So please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin, and learn more about the Heritage Academy and how you can apply. That's heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin, paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Now this is very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. The dissent notices that Congress in the early post-founding period authorized the president to make broad discretionary policy determinations. And many of the broadest delegations came in contexts related to foreign affairs. Noting specifically, and this is the Supreme Court noting it, 1794 authorization to the president while Congress was in session to, quote, impose a shipping embargo whenever, in his opinion, the public safety shall so require. Opinions by and from within the Supreme Court suggest that Congress has especially great leeway to delegate authority to the president in foreign affairs matters based on the view that realities in the area frequently support painting with a brush broader than is customarily wielded in domestic areas, quote unquote. That's Zemel versus Rush, Supreme Court, 1965. And their point is, under Article 2 of the Constitution, the president leads the way in terms of the conduct of foreign policy. And they point out that tariffs are not merely commercial enterprises or activities. They involve foreign governments, foreign businesses, foreign products, and foreign policy. And they say that President Trump here is absolutely not exercising authority beyond his Article 2 powers or past Supreme Court decisions. We'll be right back. America needs patriots who know our founding principles and who can stand by those principles today. That's why the Heritage Foundation created the Heritage Academy, to prepare conservatives like you with the additional knowledge needed to stand firm in your beliefs in a world far too often unwelcoming to conservatives. All Heritage Academy fellows learn from the country's leading experts through policy lectures and live Q&A sessions. Speakers include Victor Davis Hanson, Mark Morgan, Dr. Kevin Roberts, and many more. Fellows also interact with other conservatives across the country in one of 3 tracks: high school track, college track, or the professionals and patriots track. I wish every American could join this 8-week online fellowship. But the next round of applications close on September 21. So please go to heritage.org/Levin to apply today. That's heritage.org/Levin. Join the Heritage Academy to help restore America. Learn more at heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
The Mark Levin Show, where the Reagan Coalition meets every day. Call now, 877-381-3811.
So the non-delegation doctrine, that is, that Congress does not have the power to delegate legislating to a president, and yet look at what they've created in the bureaucracy, so that seems so ridiculous, but nonetheless. The dissent points out that several justices have in recent years noted the distinctive character of foreign affairs matters under the non-delegation doctrine. And that includes Kavanaugh, that includes Gorsuch, it includes Thomas. And so this has a very good shot at being overturned, this decision, the deference that's given to a president in foreign policy. And they say that the court's formulation requiring the ability of courts to ascertain whether substantive boundaries have been crossed really is inappropriate. That's what the president's elected to do. Inappropriate. And they go further. They say, we do not see how it would make sense to say that broad delegations, subject to particularly deferential review here in foreign policy, both of which are permitted for constitutional reasons, together lead to a conclusion of unconstitutionality. They also make the point that if Congress doesn't agree, then Congress can change the law, or Congress can pass a new law, which, of course, is true as well. So I think the better constitutional argument, in fact, I think the overwhelmingly better constitutional argument, whether you like tariffs or not, is with the president. I also want to thank Clay and Buck, who have apparently today pointed out that my comments and analysis of the First Amendment and the president's flag executive order and the decision related to it by the Supreme Court that relates to it but not exactly to what the president is doing is fully constitutional. I went through the executive order with you. I went through the history of the First Amendment with you, and I also went through the Supreme Court's decision in the flag burning case with you. I believe it was 1989. And there's nothing in the executive order that violates that decision. Nothing. Doesn't mean you can just throw people in prison for burning the American flag. You can't. But it does mean that under certain circumstances, where there are collateral crimes or offenses that are committed, and if there are state and federal laws or local laws in which those violations would occur, then you simply can. You absolutely can. Like if it's somebody's private property, or if you tear a flag off a public building that belongs to the government and you burn it because that's our flag, or other circumstances, like if burning it is intended as a hate crime, or burning it is intended to stoke violence, that sort of thing. So there are limitations to it. The Supreme Court essentially said so. How many times have you had someone say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, as you know, that's great advice for most things, but not cell phones. Because over time, the technology gets better. But the battery life fades. Processor can't keep up. Maybe the glass is broken. It's fallen too many times. But fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, you can get a cell phone and get a new one now. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Now, this month is up in a few days. I see nothing here that's provided to me that suggests they're going to continue this. Maybe they will, but you need to be mindful of the calendar. all on America's most dependable 5G network, by the way. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. In half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans, which is what Pure Talk does. They were founded by a veteran. So make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Dial pound 250, say the keyword Mark Levin to get your free phone today. That's pound 250 and say Mark Levin to switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. You're going to love it, and you're going to be very proud of the fact that you did. And I said it's in as little as 10 minutes. So dial pound 250 or pound 250 and say the keyword Mark Levin and get your free phone today with a qualifying plan. So what I've done on the run here, on the fly, it's 127 pages, this decision, I've just counted it, is giving you kind of a breakdown of where it comes out, in my view, that this is not just a commercial or economic issue. This is, in fact, a foreign policy issue. The dissent even points out in the case of Canada, Mexico, and China, tariffs are imposed for two reasons, and one of the most important reasons is the flow of fentanyl and other drugs into our country that are killing our people and creating actual casualties. And the president is using tariffs in part to address that. How do we know? Because he said so in his executive order under this Emergency Act. And the idea that this court is second-guessing him, the majority in the court, is problematic. Because while they're talking about the non-delegation authority, that is, Congress can't delegate lawmaking, even though it does every damn day to the massive bureaucracy, which is my objection. Nonetheless, it can't delegate lawmaking to a court either. And I think that's part of the problem here. So the majority looked at it at a very narrow perspective, and yet the act is actually quite broad. And the dissent says that they're diminishing the scope of the act, really, and they're empowering the court to second-guess the president in this regard. And if Congress thinks the president went too far, then Congress, this Congress, the next Congress, the Congress after that, can pass a statute addressing that. Now, that would be an interesting challenge, too, wouldn't it? Because what if they're interfering with the president's foreign policy authority under Article 2? So it wouldn't be so much a non-delegation issue, but it would be an Article 2 issue with respect to the president's authority to make foreign policy. I hope this hasn't been too complicated. I've tried to put it in plain English. I was very proud of some of the calls we received the other day where people say I take some of these complicated issues and I present them in an understandable way. That's what I try to do. And I did this on the fly, but I think I did it right. So you will have an opportunity as the weekend goes on. If you wish to read it, you can. But otherwise, that's where we are. Let's see here. All right, Mr. Producer, I am going to your audio list, if you would. I'm trying to find it, of course. We're having a printer problem. I always have some damn problem. So we're going to go to... Hold on, folks. I want to go to Mike Johnson. You know, we always play what the Democrats say because I want to respond to them. Because I don't think they're adequately responded to, especially when it's on CNN or MSNBC or it's in the New York Times or the Washington Post or such publications. But Speaker Johnson was on CNN today about redistricting. And Governor Abbott, who I happen to think is a great governor, he signed the Texas Redistricting Act today. And so, of course, CNN and MSNBC and the rest of them take up the cause of the Democrats, Newsom, the DNC. They're troubled by this. Of course, they weren't troubled by anything the Democrats have done, which is appalling. They never mentioned Massachusetts, which doesn't have a single Republican in the House of Representatives, even though 35% of the people there are Republican. Even though what's taken place in California, even before their attempted change, and what's taken place in Illinois a couple of years back, didn't seem to upset them in the least. Not in the least. They never even brought it up. But I want you to take a listen to what the speaker says. Again, to CNN, this guy Berman is truly a mushhead, an idiot. Mouthpiece for the Democrats. Cut 3, go.
Listen, 43% of the electorate in California is Republican. 14% of their delegation to Congress is Republican. They've already disenfranchised people. They've already gerrymandered. And it's interesting to me that Democrats who have been playing politics with redistricting for decades are now trying to lecture the red states and Republicans who are simply following state and federal law. That's what they did in Texas. There's a big difference between what's happening in those states.
You cited the Republicans in California.
By the way, stop a minute, please. This guy Berman, you could hear he barely wanted to let Speaker Johnson finish. He was ready. He was ready to jump. Go ahead.
Wisconsin, every year it's 50-50 for presidential elections. 2 out of 8 representatives are Democrats, so 25%. In Utah, 37%, about the same that
voted
for
state for state, because the blue states have eliminated entirely.
But that's what I'm saying. Where does it stop? I'm asking. I think it's ridiculous. I want to know where it stops.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have a limited.
Let me help John Berman. I don't know what the speaker says, but let me address this first. What do you mean, where does it stop? Do you understand the Constitution? You're obviously a Nimrod. You obviously don't. The states get to make these determinations. What do you mean, where does it stop? You know, it's interesting. In California, they said, where does it stop? And they created this commission, which was to be filled with objective experts who would sit down with maps and population numbers and race numbers and all the rest and come up with these pristine districts that were based on apolitical determinations. And what happened? Newsom and Pelosi stuffed that commission with partisan hack Democrats, including some who were members of the DNC. And even now, what that commission has done isn't enough, because they dared to create 9 Republican districts out of 52 out of 52 seats. 17% Republican, even though you heard the speaker, over 40% voted Republican. And so now he's even bypassing that. And what does the state Supreme Court say? They're stuffed with radical Democrats. It's okay. So they're violating their own statute. They're bypassing the people of California who are required to participate in it under their processes there. To do what? To eliminate 5 Republican seats, so you would literally have 48 Democrat seats and 4 Republican seats. In a state where Republicans voted over 40% Republican. Where voters voted over 40% Republican. What do you think of that? Where does it end? Go ahead.
Over these things, and I don't control the governors. If I could get them all on a conference call, I'd say resolve it, gentlemen and ladies, but they don't, and so we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, what a stupid question. Now listen to Barack Obama and Eric Holder. Frickin' frack, Sacco Vanzetti. 2 hardcore left-wing radical partisans. They put out an ad calling Texas and Florida redistricting racist. Racist. Why is it racist? You might elect more Republicans? Why is that racist? It's sick. Cut 4, go.
Hey everybody, it's Barack.
All right, let's go back to the beginning. Hey everybody. Hey, it's Barack. Hey, cool man. It's Barack here. Hey man, it's cool. All right, go ahead.
Hey everybody, it's Barack, and I am here with my good friend, Attorney General Eric Holder, because we're facing an existential threat to our democracy, and we need your help.
Stop right there. You see, everything's an existential threat to democracy if they don't win, if they don't fix the results so they have to win. It's always an existential threat when they lose. It's an existential threat if they don't have more Supreme Court justices. It's an existential threat. Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, they're existential threats. Donald Trump is an existential threat. Remember when Newt Gingrich was an existential threat? When there's a Republican majority, it's an existential threat. When you secure borders and you're deporting illegal aliens, that's an existential threat. When you support the cops, it's an existential threat. Go ahead.
Now, in states across the country, like Texas and Florida, these extreme conservative politicians are announcing and acting on plans to slice and dice House districts with the goal of preserving their own power while diluting the voting power of communities of
Isn't
color.
this sick? Isn't this sick? You folks know the facts. A lot of people don't pay attention to this stuff. You folks know the facts. And yet, look how they lie. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Conservatives in every stage of life are faced with ever-increasing challenges to our values in the classroom, on campus, and at work. Prepare yourself with a solid understanding of our nation's founding principles in today's most important public policy debates. The Heritage Foundation created the Heritage Academy to help ensure that every conservative from any walk of life has the foundation and the tools needed to defend their values. This 8-week online fellowship includes policy lectures on the most pressing issues facing Americans today, live Q&As to learn from top experts in the conservative movement, and opportunities to connect with other conservatives around the country. Without conservatives grounded in truth and informed on the state of our nation, America as we know it cannot survive. So please go to heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN, and learn more about the Heritage Academy and how you can apply. That's heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN, paid for by the Heritage Foundation. All right, I'm going to post something on this because I can already see some of the cable guys and radio guys are getting this wrong. It's too bad. It's too bad that we embrace the arguments typically of the people who are wrong about these things. So let me sum up, because you're going to hear a lot of crap about this tonight and throughout the course of Labor Day weekend. The Appellate Court ruled against most of the president's tariffs, and it has it wrong. Whether you like tariffs or not, the act does in fact grant the president broad powers to declare an emergency. Even more, the Constitution under Article 2 grants the president broad powers to make foreign policy. The president's lawyers are obviously aware of this, which is why the executive orders at issue rely, in part, on the issues of foreign policy, including Mexico, Canada, China, which are not doing enough to prevent the flow of deadly drugs into our country. As for Congress not having the power to delegate this kind of decision-making to the president, several Supreme Court decisions and justices have noted in the past that when dealing in foreign policy as opposed to domestic policy, the president has broad authority, and the non-delegation doctrine really is looked at totally differently. Totally differently. And this goes back to the early days of the administration. Okay. 2 great hours left. Our foot is on the gas pedal. We don't slow down, and we don't tap the brakes. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. There's a lot going on this weekend, I'm sure, in your personal lives. Maybe you're traveling, going to the beach, going to the lake, family cookout. Maybe you just want to rest and relax, read a book, stare at the ceiling, whatever. It's a good weekend. We will have a Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday and Sunday. Now, what I've done on the Saturday show, I've taken 2 of my most recent opening statements that I think are the most important. And we will be playing those back-to-back for you. And then on Sunday's program, people loved Sean Hannity interviewing me on my book on power. We will be running that as well. So I think you'll enjoy them a great deal. And I just wanted you to be aware you can set your DVR. That way, if you forget, if you're doing something, at least you can go back and say, okay, I'll have a V8. No, I mean, wait a minute. It's on the DVR. Now, Michael Eric Dyson is a reprobate. I detest this man. He lives and breeds racialism, I'll call it. He just, nasty dude. He's written some very stupid books, in my humble opinion. I even cite him. It's either in my book, The Democrat Party Hates America, or American Marxism. One or the other, I can't recall. I think it was The Democrat Party Hates America, but nonetheless. He's on CNN today, the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. We have anniversaries for everything, don't we, Mr. Producer? And what did he learn? What did we learn as a nation? Now, 20 years ago, you might recall George W. Bush was president. Nobody really thinks of George W. Bush as a racist, do they? Do we? No. But it doesn't matter, you see. He's not a Marxist, Islamist, anti-Semite, so he's got to be a racist. And this is something George W. Bush will never understand, and his supporters and surrogates will never understand. George W. Bush is viewed the same way as Reagan, who's viewed the same way as Trump, who's viewed the same way as all of us who are not radical left-wing Marxist kooks. With great hate. Great hate. So here he is on the Constipated News Network. What is the point of CNN? Can somebody please tell me? Somebody just... is there a point to this network? Cut 9, go.
Well, look, let's be real. The economic inequality is connected to racial oppression in this nation. This is not somebody standing, aha, we don't like you, we hate you. It's about the consequence of systemic injustice, a word that has been nearly banned in this radical anti-DEI
it's
era.
Been banned by whom, you moron? Who's stopping you from saying anything, or anybody from saying anything? Anti-DEI has nothing to do with banning words. Nothing. And the fact that fellow human beings want to treat other fellow human beings as fellow human beings isn't a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. Go ahead.
And as a result of that, if we live in a society where just the mention of DEI evokes negative viewpoints about black people or women or other minoritized populations, we're living... I
didn't know there was a word, minoritized population. Did you know that, Mr. Producer? They're minoritized. I thought it was called minority populations, but no, they're minoritized populations. Racialized oppression, he calls this. Go ahead.
In the arena of racialized oppression, and we're living in the arena of racism naked and raw. And
you know, it's amazing to me, all the tremendous progress that's made in this country. Tremendous progress. And naked racism, racialized oppression, minoritized populations. This is what happens when you don't think of yourself as an American. But you think of yourself in terms of race. This is what happens. Now, if somebody's attacking you because of your race, I get it. Seriously. Or your faith. Or your sex. Then, of course, you're identified that way and you react. And you defend yourself and you react. But I'm not talking about that. Everything is systemic. Everything is... It's just a lie. It is a sickness. Truly. You know, I'm watching... I don't always have time to do this, but I'm on the plane, the jet, flying to Florida. And I'm on JetBlue. And I'm watching my favorite show on ESPN, First Take, with my buddy Stephen A. Smith. And these are smart guys. I mean, you know, they're talking sports. I don't care what they're talking about. These are smart guys. They know the players. They know the backup players. They know the college history of the players. They know the family histories of the player. They know statistics about the players. They know different plays. They know the owners. This is not easy. It's not simple. It's just in a different realm. That's all. It's just in a different realm. And athletics has overlays of the culture and society and politics from time to time. We wish it didn't, but it does. And some people try to exploit it. But that's another point for another day. And I'm watching it, and I'm thinking now. I wasn't thinking about it at that time. I'm thinking about, okay, there was Stephen A. I don't remember everybody's name. But I'm guessing the majority of the guests are black. And you know what's funny? It didn't even enter my mind. I'm watching these guys. They're smart as hell. Many of them are former athletes. I mean, really accomplished people. It's good to get to that point, don't you think? We have more interracial marriage in this country than ever before. And it's growing at a significant pace. What does that tell you? The problem is the Democrat Party and the Marxists need racialism. They have to have racialism. Now, I wrote about this also in American Marxism, and the Democrat Party hates America. We've moved from civil rights, that is, equality under the law, under the Constitution, the right to vote, one man, one vote, that sort of thing. We moved from all that. Why? Because for the most part, as a society, we've wrestled with this for decades and have resolved it. Now, are there individual cases? Yes, man is imperfect. Doesn't mean they're racist, but man's imperfect. Went from a civil war to the civil rights movement to even more. Various state and federal laws, various court decisions. Most of the people trying to get into this country are not white. They're people of color trying to escape Southeast Asia, the continent of Africa, the Caribbean, Haiti, trying to escape and come into our country. They would not try to come into the United States of America if we were as Michael Eric Dyson says. They keep throwing around these shibboleths, keep throwing this stuff around. But the Marxist left, the Democrat Party, they need this. They need it. It's a knee-jerk that they have, and they have to use it. They have to use it all the time. Just like they have to use the word Hitler all the time. Dictator all the time. When talking about Trump, they have to use it because they have nothing else. They literally have nothing else. Now, as I explained in the past, we moved from civil rights, broadly defined as rights under the law, voting rights, that sort of thing, to now civil rights being defined economically. Economic inequality. You're never going to have economic equality. They don't even have it in the prison country called North Korea. What does that mean, economic equality? Economic equality without liberty, without capitalism, is totalitarianism. Everybody should earn the same thing, no matter what they're doing, no matter their contribution, no matter what the market is. That's a hellhole. And we all know that. So what does economic equality mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's a phrase they throw out there to empower government, to empower a relative handful of masterminds, not because they're smart, because they grab power, to redistribute wealth from people they want to have it, they want to take it from, to people who they want to have it. The problem with DEI is that it is discriminatory. And what else? It creates stereotypes. So guys like Dyson, on the one hand, he's saying it shouldn't create stereotypes. And if you think it does, you're racist. And yet the purpose of DEI is to what? It's to circumvent merit. Merit. So we've come a long way from ending discrimination. That's been the goal. The goal. Replacing it with merit, a colorblind society. And now we're told color front and center. But don't notice it. Go ahead.
Reality we have to confront. So one of the greatest failures is our inability to grapple with the racial inequality, the economic inequality, and the social injustice that needs to be addressed.
These are the phrases, among others, that they just throw around all the time, and they're never pressed on, which drives me crazy. And I've written extensively about this. Go ahead.
With its resources, could certainly do. And until we make up our mind...
With what resources can we certainly do what? What are you talking about? What's he talking about? Go ahead.
Address this with dispatch and aplomb, and to do it efficiently.
Dispatch and aplomb. Address it with dispatch and aplomb. What does that mean? I mean, I know what the words mean, but what is he saying? This guy's a mealy-mouth. A buffoon. With dispatch and aplomb, and do it efficiently. What does that mean? Do what efficiently? Go ahead.
Most are the people who have already suffered most. Black people, poor people, and those who are vulnerable.
Isn't it interesting? He says things like this. Who suffers in these totalitarian regimes where they seek quote-unquote equality? Nothing he says here is new. Oh, it's sort of modernized, but it's not new. It requires a totalitarian government that controls the economy, that controls our social relationships in order to do what he says. One of the biggest racists was Fidel Castro. Black Cubans. You know, these Marxist regimes aren't exactly known for treating minorities well. Ask the Uyghurs in communist China. Ask them. Ask the Christians and the Druze and others in Syria. Ask them. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. Now, I want to salute the President of the United States and the Secretary of State for something they did today that was very, very gutsy. Very gutsy. And also very, very important. Secretary of State Rubio denied visas to Palestinian leaders for UN General Assembly, citing terror support. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has denied Palestinian leaders visas to attend next month's United Nations General Assembly, citing long-standing U.S. law, which of course was defied and ignored by the Biden regime, that prohibits recognition of Palestinian statehood and sanctions the Palestinian Authority for so-called pay-for-slave payments to terrorists. According to internal documents reviewed by Fox News, Rubio signed off on recommendations that will block visas for senior officials of the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and including Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, who is a terrorist. In compliance with the laws and national security interests of the United States, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is denying and revoking visas from members of the Palestine Liberation Organization and the Palestinian Authority ahead of the upcoming UN General Assembly, State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott said in a statement today. Before they can be taken seriously as partners for peace, the PLO and the PA must repudiate terrorism, lawfare campaigns at the ICC and the ICJ, and the pursuit of unilateral recognition of statehood. The PA mission to the UN will receive waivers per the UN headquarters agreement. The United States remains open to re-engagement should the PLO and the PA demonstrably take concrete steps to return to constructive engagement. The Trump administration does not reward terrorism. This is MAGA. This is Make America Great Again. The move prevents Palestinian leaders from addressing the annual UN gathering in New York next month, the stage they have frequently used to advance unilateral recognition of statehood. The decision stems from findings under the PLO Commitments Compliance Act and the Middle East Peace Commitments Act, which determined the PLO and PA were out of compliance with U.S. commitments by unilaterally declaring Palestinian statehood, glorifying violence, promoting anti-Semitism, I'm quoting, and providing material support to terrorists. The sanctions mandate an automatic denial of visas for at least 180 days, and it covers Abbas himself, who's been promoting terrorism and paying for it. We have the Taylor Force Act, which prevents us providing money to the PLO/PA, which uses that money to give pensions to terrorists who slaughter Israelis and Americans. How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk.
In a world of pathetic liberal potholes, he's a truck full of hot constitutional asphalt. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
The truth about 9/11, Mr. Producer. Do you know we don't know the truth about 9/11, apparently? Apparently we don't know the truth. Despite all the investigations, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives. That's right. There's a whole untold story. And our friend, Chatsworth Catarleson, he's the only one that knows it. And you go sign up over there and find out. There's a whole series on this, apparently. It's got to be true. I saw it on Mediaite. Somebody sent it to me. Because everything Dan Abrams does is obviously true and objective and newsworthy. Two peas in a pod, this Dan Abrams and Catarson. But now you're going to know the truth about 9/11. And then we have, pardon me, Bannon. He's out there. He's really got a hate on for Jews and Israel and Netanyahu, bleeding out of his eyes. His massive, substantial pores. I believe it was the Prime Minister of Israel who said, MAGA supports Israel. And, of course, that sent Bannon to the toilet. He couldn't control himself. Hey, look, I'm not attacking these people. I'm just revealing what they're up to and what they've said. I don't believe I've misstated anything. MAGA doesn't stand for that. This always amazes me. Make America Great Again. Started in 1984. That was a Reagan campaign. One of his slogans. To Donald Trump, obviously, campaign slogan and a movement. The presidents, they determine what it means. Not these entrails who follow them around and stab them in the back. They don't determine what it means. It doesn't mean saddling up with Islamists, Holocaust deniers, suicidal isolationists, people who sound like Bernie Sanders and Mondami and all the rest. That's not what we stand for here. No, we're very clear-eyed about who we are and what we believe. Very clear-eyed. Over here at National Review, by Jim Garrity, social media influencers offered $8,000 a month to bolster Democratic messaging. Why do they always have to pay for these front groups, these front people? Notice almost none of it is simultaneous. Almost none of it. Don't blink, people, he writes. I'm about to say something that I have not said much in the past, and I don't expect to say much in the future. Taylor Lorenz has written an informative and useful article. You remember that crackpot? But here she's written an informative and useful article, apparently. It's over in Wired, and it discusses payola from a left-wing group with deep pockets to progressive social media influencers, a.k.a. Marxists, to ensure they stay on message. Quote, in a private group chat in June, dozens of Democratic political influencers discussed whether to take advantage of an enticing opportunity. They were being offered $8,000 per month to take part in a secretive program aimed at bolstering Democratic messaging on the internet. Well, you don't need that when you have the fake MAGA buffoons pretty much doing that. But the contract sent to them from Chorus, the nonprofit arm of a liberal influencer marketing platform, a.k.a. Marxists, came with some strings. Among other issues, it mandated extensive secrecy about disclosing their payments and had restrictions on what sort of political content the creators could produce. Now, Democrats hope that the secretive Chorus Creator Incubator program, funded by a powerful liberal dark money group, a.k.a. Marxists, called the 1630 Fund, might tip the scales. The program kicked off last month, and creators involved were told by Chorus that over 90 influencers were set to take part. Creators told Wired that the contract stipulated they'd be kicked out and essentially cut off financially if they even so much as acknowledged that they were part of the program. See, they don't want you to know that this is an entire scheme. Some creators also raised concerns about a slew of restrictive clauses in the contract. Creators in the program are not allowed to use any funds or resources that they receive as part of the program to make content that supports or opposes any political candidate or campaign without express authorization from Chorus in advance and in writing per the contract. The contracts reviewed by Wired prohibits standard partnership disclosures, declaring that creators will not publicize their relationship with Chorus or tell others that they're members of the program without course's prior express consent. Sounds totalitarian to me, but then again, Marxists are. They also forbid creators from, quote, disclosing the identity of any funder and give Chorus the ability to force creators to remove or correct content based solely on the organization's discretion if that content was made at the Chorus organized event. You see how close this is, or actually is quite similar to fascist, Marxist regimes? Well, they're not a regime. Who cares? They want to be a regime. That's the whole point. Chorus describes itself as nonpartisan, nonprofit advocacy organization that's apparently running a secretive program aimed at holstering democratic messaging on the internet, which somehow sounds less than fully nonpartisan. Yeah, clearly, if they're a 501c3, that's the designation given by the Internal Revenue Service. They're violating that. This also explains, if you ever look at my comments, foreign governments and groups like this going on there with their vile, vicious, grotesque words about me and President Trump and so forth. 90 influencers at $8,000 per month comes to $720,000 a month. That Chorus organization has some deep pockets over there. The organization's website has a short FAQ, that, in other words, explanation, that includes who funds Chorus, with the answer, Chorus is a 501c4 nonprofit organization with grassroots support from hundreds of individuals. So it is a nonprofit advocacy organization. We're grateful to those who understand the importance of investing in the independent media ecosystem to make sure content creators have access to training and tools that help them grow, quote unquote. In fact, a lawyer for the organization said the whole purpose of the institution was to obscure who was paying for what amount to political advertising. Quote, there's some real great advantages to housing the program in a nonprofit, Graham Wilson, a lawyer working with Chorus, said to creators on a Zoom call reviewed by Wired. It gives us the ability to raise money from donors. It also, with this structure, it avoids a lot of the public disclosure of public disclaimers, paid for by blah, 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 that you see on political ads. We don't need to deal with any of that. Your names aren't showing up on like reports filed with the FEC. Now, how do you like that? It's a cover-up. A cover-up of what they're really doing, which would likely get them in deep trouble with the IRS, if not the Justice Department Criminal Division. Now, in the world of journalism, if you've got a financial tie to someone you're covering or discussing, at a minimum, you're supposed to disclose it to your readers, listeners, or viewers. This is why every Washington Post article about Amazon includes the line somewhere, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Ideally, if you have a financial connection to someone or an institution, you don't write about, comment on, or talk about them at all. But in the world of influencers, it's the Wild West. There are, that is a great point that he raises here. We have some people who we used to consider friends, right? We used to consider conservatives, right? And they've taken a hard left turn, and then they try and dress it up as MAGA, or they try and dress it up as populism or nationalism. Maybe they should reveal their funding sources, don't you think? Doesn't it make sense, Mr. Producer? I think these podcasters should reveal their funding sources. In fact, I think I'm going to bring this up a lot. What are Mark's funding sources? I have no funding sources. I work for Westwood One. I work for Fox. I write my books with Simon & Schuster. And I do The Blaze. It's me, myself, and I. And these publicly held corporations. So the question is, maybe these people who claim to represent you and me but represent nothing like us, maybe they should reveal their funding sources, don't you think? I sure as hell think so. Wow. That's a good point. If we expect this of the dark money on the left, we should expect it of the dark money on the kook side. On the kooks. We shouldn't have to do investigations to find out. They should just tell us. But in the world of influencers, it's the Wild West. There are no discernible consequences for touting someone who is secretly paying you. There were some similar cases when the bloggers were emerging. Now, this is how you end up with Russian state media companies working through cutouts to build, quote, a network of heterodox commentators that focus on Western political and cultural issues, unquote, to pay a monthly fee of $400,000 plus $100,000 signing bonus and an additional performance bonus for programming that just happens to align with the interests of the Russian government. All of this came out in court last year, and there were no discernible professional consequences for any of the U.S. heterodox commentators who insisted they had no idea they were being paid by the Russian government. None of these right-wing influencers were charged with any crime. Wow. Similarly, some may find it unusual to see so many seemingly independent commentators who seem to just sing the praises of the Qatari government for no discernible reason. Yes, that's right. Well, taking money from a foreign government to tout its message is the sort of thing you're supposed to register with the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Yep. Domestically, there are no laws covering this sort of thing. It's simply a matter of professionalism and ethics. Now, I know this is going to shock you, but it turns out a whole bunch of social media influencers might not be the most ethical people. And that's the key right there. So it seems to me, no, the government shouldn't get involved, but you should. You should demand to know who's funding whom. I just told you. My corporate partners and employers, there's no secret about it. But so much of the podcast world seems very secretive about it, doesn't it, Mr. Producer? Well, they should be forced by subscribers or people who watch or listen to them to disclose all of it. All of it. In my humble opinion. All right. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
How many times have you told someone, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Now, that's great advice for most things, but not so much for a cell phone. See, over time, the battery life fades, the processor can't keep up, and it's fallen in the toilet perhaps one too many times. Fortunately, thanks to Pure Talk, your cell phone is something you can replace without feeling guilty. When you switch to Pure Talk this month, they're going to give you a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 qualifying plan. Wow, just $35 a month for talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone, the scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass, and a battery that lasts all day. All on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like Pure Talk is a really good thing. You win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping more veterans. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to get your free phone today. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switch to my wireless company, America's wireless company, Pure Talk. Wow, we have a whole big hour left. Big hour left. Then the 3-day weekend, so stick with me. We're not going anywhere. We're speeding ahead. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. This is Hour 3. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. No, there I am, minding my own business, going through news and reading books and getting ready for the program, and I came across this. From Reuters. Gold is on track for best month in 4 as inflation data bolsters rate cut bets. You know, we talk about gold a lot here. Reuters, gold prices rose around 1% on Friday, just on Friday. and were poised for their best monthly performance since April as U.S. inflation data reinforced expectations that the Federal Reserve could cut interest rates next month. In other words, there's no inflation, so they can cut the rates. Spot gold was up 0.8% at $3,443 and change per ounce. That is massive. Its highest level since July 17. Bullion has gained 4.7% in August. U.S. gold futures for December delivery settled 1.2% higher at $3,516. The point is, gold is going up. That's not me. That's Reuters. U.S. spending. The dollar held steady, but was set for a monthly drop of 2.2%. This is why I talk about diversification. A lower dollar makes gold less expensive for overseas buyers. U.S. consumer spending increased solidly in July, while underlying inflation picked up slightly. The U.S. personal consumption expenditures index rose 0.2% month to month, was up 2.6% on year-to-year basis, both in line with expectations. We have expectations of a Fed rate cut. I don't know what they're waiting for. I mean, honestly, I just don't know. Or potentially two cuts throughout this year, which is generally supportive for commodity prices across the board, including gold and silver. I mean, I gotta believe they're going to increase the rates. They're killing the housing market. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know what the hell's going on. But I certainly understand why the president's upset about it. Traders increased their bets on 25 basis point rate cut by the U.S. Central Bank at the September policy meeting to a near 89% probability, up from 85%. Meanwhile, a federal judge on Friday will consider whether that's irrelevant. It's nothing to do with gold. Okay. So there you have it. Thought I'd give you that information. I just happened to come across it. Listen to this one. In Breitbart, one of the great sites, John Hayward. A horde, this is a big problem. A horde of motorcycle-riding gunmen stormed the village of Gamdam Malam in Nigeria's Zamfara state on Saturday. So they're ahead of us, so that just happened. Shooting up the town and riding off with over 100 captives, mostly women and children, hostages. Actually slaves, they don't give them back. They go into these little African villages. There'll be hundreds of them, or 100, or maybe more, on motorcycles, these gangs, and they grab these women and kids. Zamfara has long been plagued by bandits with a penchant for mass kidnappings. Saturday's attack, ready for this, would bring the total number of people abducted over the past year to almost 5,000. Now, other than Breitbart and me, have you heard anybody mention this? Anybody on cable? Anybody on network? No. Local residents said the attackers roared into town on motorcycles with guns blazing, then split into two groups. One group established a roadblock to prevent any of the residents from escaping. Can you imagine living in a life like this, in a situation like this? Well, the other said about stealing livestock and taking human prisoners. We're being treated like slaves in our own land, as if there's no government, one of the villagers told Reuters on Wednesday. Now, this is real slavery. This is real, just horrendous type of activity that's taking place. And you'll notice it's not about racism. Before departing the area, the bandits grabbed another 46 captives from the nearby village of Ruwan Rana. Heavy rain masked their escape into the Makari forest, a notorious hideout for armed gangs. Zamfara residents fear the bandits will strike again soon. The Nigerian military has been conducting airstrikes and ground operations in the Makari forest. And while this is why at book signings, when I have people come up to me, and they're Nigerian Christians, and they are immigrants to the United States, the kindest people you'll ever meet. And they talk about, thank God for America, that they're Trump supporters, that people in America don't understand what a wonderful country this is. Well, some of us do, of course, but you get their point. Because look at the hell they have to deal with. They thought they could regroup, rearm, and launch another wave of terror. Instead, they walked straight into a well-laid trap. A Nigerian military source said this is about a different attack, having nothing to do with what I just mentioned. Samafara is Nigeria's top kidnapping state, and kidnapping has become one of the top industries in the region, with an estimated $31 million in ransoms demanded over the past year. Less than $2 million was actually collected, due in part to the overall poverty of the region. Dr. Umar Yakubu, executive director of the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, told the Daily Trust of Nigeria on Thursday that low human capital development was a major factor in the kidnapping epidemic. He and other experts faulted the government for not doing enough to track ransom payments or to dissuade local families from paying them. Faith in the police and security services is so low in the Northwest that residents immediately begin scrapping money together to pay ransoms as soon as they're demanded. It's just terrible. The Danish Institute for International Studies published a report on Nigerian banditry on Wednesday that argued that gangs, the Makakari, Makakari, and that farce region had become an alternative government, brutal and medieval in character, their power based on bandit capital, such as weapons, manpower, and fear. While bandits are often dismissed as mere criminals engaged in violent wealth accumulation, we argue that bandit groups borrow old historical repertoires of rule involving a time-tested combination of submission in core areas, the levying of tributes on farming communities, and raiding at ungoverned frontiers. Last week, a group of prominent Nigerian business leaders, politicians, and activists issued a statement warning the parts of Nigeria are enduring war levels of slaughter. They called on the president of Nigeria to form a task force, broad authority to end conflicts. Whew, boy, oh boy. You know why that grabbed my attention? Not only because of the horror of it, because I knew nobody else would talk about it. These things need to be discussed because they're so horrendous. Over at Breitbart, even handguns too. The Trace reporter floats Australia-like gun ban if the trans allegedly kills Catholic school children. That's the title. During a discussion on MSNBC centered on gun controls that might be pushed post-Minneapolis shooting, the Trace reporter, Mike Spies, suggested bans that would include handguns. The Trace is an online pro-gun control outlet. Spies was in a roundtable at MSNBC's Katie Turd, who said the majority of Americans don't own guns and the majority of Americans want stricter gun laws. Hello, this is called the Bill of Rights. It's an unalienable right. Whether the majority of Americans, quote unquote, like it or not, I don't believe it, but it doesn't matter. That's like saying a majority of Americans don't believe in due process. So what? That's why it's the Bill of Rights. Turd did not offer any substantiation for her claims. No, she never does. That's why we call her Turd. Nor did she mention that the number of firearms in civilian possession topped 490 million as of 2022. So I would ask Katie Turd, I want to see your gun control law, and I want to see how you're going to remove guns from human beings in this country. I want to see how you're going to prevent criminals from getting guns, and how you're going to prevent guns from coming over the border, when, of course, the Democrats wouldn't even prevent terrorists and criminals from coming over the border. It's time to put these people to the test. It's time to demand specifics. It really is. Spies concurred with Turd's claims, then said in part, I do think there is a lack of knowledge among lawmakers, and I think like the same playbook has been enforced since background checks were first introduced in the 90s and the assault weapons ban. We always go back to those things, whatever that means. Spies talked about red flag laws for a bit, noting aspects of the laws he does not like, and then he said, you have to be honest and say what will actually work. which is what nobody wants to hear, which is that there are just simply too many firearms and they are way too accessible. Turd interjected, and they're way too powerful. Spies echoed, and they're too powerful, even handguns too, again. So how come Katie Turd and the Constipated News Network are so opposed to the deportation of criminals, keep attacking Trump, give voice to guests who attack ICE, when we're trying to get people out of this country who are violent criminals, MS-13, Venezuelan gang members, people who've committed heinous acts, violent acts, with guns and without guns? And then when you talk about putting people in prison, what do you get? We have too many people in prison. We need social workers. These people are unserious. They're stupid. And how many more experiments do we need? Blue cities have been experimented with. Blue states have been experimented with. How does that work? And you know what they say? If you don't adapt our policies nationwide, how can they work? So in other words, you got to take their idiotic policies that have been proven to fail and apply them nationwide. Now, actually, you're going to have to apply them worldwide, because many of the illegal guns in this country are coming over the border. Many of them are coming from communist China, as a matter of fact. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Labor Day weekend, many of you will be shopping, I'm sure. Maybe you'll be going to Costco or Sam's Club, Walmart, some hamburger and hot dogs and rolls to go along, some baked beans. Doesn't that sound great, Mr. Producer? Maybe you'll be shopping elsewhere. Go to your Barnes & Noble. You never know. Perfect time to grab your copy of On Power. It is deeply discounted. Do you know why? Because when you're on the New York Times bestseller list for a month, the stores like to deal in quantity, in the quantity of sales. So they compete with each other and they try to lower the prices. And they try to compete with Amazon as well, which has a very good discount on the book right now. I don't write novels. I don't have co-authors. When you see a book with a co-author on the book, it usually means the co-author wrote the book and the so-called author maybe edited it or reviewed it or was interviewed for it. I'm just being honest with you. You won't see any co-author in my book because there are no co-authors. But if you're really interested in pushing the boundaries a little bit about what drives life, about what drives society and culture, in a way that I think in this book, I made it very accessible and understandable and very compelling, then now's the time to grab your copy of On Power. It's the perfect weekend to do it, a 3-day weekend. Many of you are headed for the ocean. You know, my wife says you got to call it the shore, not the beach. I don't know what this is all about. I call it the beach. I call it the shore. No, call it the shore. Don't call it the beach. But I do love going to the beach and the shore. We have a grand old time together. We have a lot of fun. So you can grab your copy of On Power now. Maybe you're at an airport. God forbid if your plane is canceled. But in any event, we noticed that the Hudson bookstores and all the bookstores at the airports are carrying On Power. Maybe you're going to a train station, taking the Acela or whatever type of train you use. We're finding the same thing there. So the book is there, and it's very, very encouraging. That means you people are interested in it, and you're purchasing it, or it wouldn't be there. But it won't be there forever, because a lot of books come out in October and November for the Christmas period, so they clean the shelves out. So grab your copy while you can. You know, one of the tests I have for my books, it used to be my father and my mother. God bless their souls. I wish they were here. They're not here. And they would tell me the truth about what they honestly felt about the book. Now the test is my mother-in-law, Sylvia. She reads a ton, and she watches Fox, and she's really up on everything. Sharp as a tack. And it's very interesting about this book. She doesn't put it down. She doesn't put it down. In fact, I think she's about 3/4 of the way through. And she has a number of sort of bookmarks in there. We have a friend who is a very high-powered lawyer, and she's now working in the administration. Really, really smart. And she said, I read it twice, I underlined, I doggy-eared, and I'd signed the book to her and her husband. They're very good friends of ours. He wasn't pleased with that. He said, you marked up the book, so I signed him personally a book just so he would have one. But in any event, it's a hot book right now, and I encourage you to grab it. It's a hot book for a reason. And I think you're going to learn a ton in such a short period of time. Now, I want to take a moment also to thank the President of the United States, who promoted the book not once, not twice, but 3 times. My dear friend, brother, Sean Hannity, who interviewed me for the book, and that will be airing again on Sunday. I want to thank Suzanne Scott, the head muckety-muck at Fox, and her willingness to let me appear on so many of the wonderful Fox programs. I want to thank all the hosts there as well. I want to thank all the radio hosts. Some big, not so big, some not so big, but all great. All really, really terrific. I cannot thank each of you, over 100 of you here, but I want to thank you generally. Some syndicated, some not. Doesn't matter, just fantastic. I want to thank my friend Stephen A. Smith, Bill O'Reilly, Vince, Clay and Buck. Oh, I should not have done this. I should not have done this. My great subs who come on the program, I want to thank all of them. I want to thank my wife, my children, my dogs, everybody. Most of all, you. Great Americans. Thank you. Grab your copy. It's less than $20 everywhere you go. I'll be right back.
If the world seems so confusing, Mike will be glad to clear that up for you. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
All right. We promised to go to calls, as you know. As we jump into the DNA pool here, Mr. Producer, let us go to, let me see here. Let's go to Brandon, Colorado Springs, Colorado, the great KVOR. Go! Yellow.
Hey, Mr. Levin.
How are you?
So I just want to start off by saying I don't think you're that intimidating. Maybe I just get your sense of humor, but...
Well, thank you.
That's right, I said it, and Ahmed Yabba Dabba Doo, and that stuff cracks me up, man.
You're a good man.
You're funny. But I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on a little theory. You know, you had Jack Hibbs protesting. He's a pastor in Southern California. He was telling his congregation to basically leave the state over AB 495. And
what is a... Hold on now. So let's slow down. What's AB 495? I don't know.
It's Assembly Bill 495. And basically, if it passes, I mean, they're calling it the child trafficking bill. If it passes, anybody could download the form and just sign it off and go say you want to take Susie Q out of school X, and they don't require a background check. They don't require you to...
So they don't know if they're a parent or a relative. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Anybody can do it, and they can take out any child. So they protested. He told his congregation to get up there, Sacramento.
Well, listen, I actually got to read this because I never heard of it, to be honest with you. But what's your theory about Americans migrating across America?
Well, so, I mean, if that passes, and he's telling his entire following, online, and his congregation, 10,000 followers, I mean, if they just start moving out of state, and then you got Mamdani in New York, and, the billionaires leaving with all their jobs. And I listen to a lot of people in their circle, Glenn Beck and whatnot, and he just moved to Florida. I don't know. I feel like something's going on, something a little weird.
I think something's going on. They're all following me.
You're already there.
I've been here 2007. How many years is that now? What's that, 8 years? No. It's 18 years. Something like that. Yeah, it's been a little while. All right, my brother. Thanks for your call. Yes, thank you. Is it 2007? That can't be right, can it? Can that be right? That's too long. No, 2007? No, that would be 18 years. Hasn't been that long. Has it? Holy moly. Let's go to Donna, Iverness, Florida, the great WXJB. How are you, Donna?
Hey, I think it's incumbent upon you.
Yes?
To teach
what should I do?
The entire world Yiddish.
I don't know Yiddish.
You don't know Yiddish.
I know,
yes,
like,
you do.
I know, like, I know, like 7 or 8 words. Some of them aren't pleasant. Schlep.
Like you go to the grocery store and schlep your groceries in.
Yenta.
Mensch. You know a mensch. That would be Marco Rubio.
Yes.
And President Trump.
Yeah.
And
but there's other words out there
that I think describes all Democrats.
Uh-oh.
Mishigas.
Mishigas. I know what that means.
Yes.
Or putz or schmuck. Those are words too. They're not very pleasant words, but nonetheless.
But Mishigas is exactly what they keep talking out loud.
Yes. You're right. All right, Donna. I'll take that under advisement. Thank you. God bless you. Mishigas. It's all crap, basically. Let's go to Blake. Tyler, Texas. Now, Blake, I don't think you want me speaking Yiddish. You probably don't give a damn, do you? Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, I speak cat. I speak all kinds of strange languages. But, it's just fun. Sometimes I dabba do and all that. But,
amen to that.
I got an important point to make, and it has to do with the Trump tariffs. The Trump tariffs that are in place.
You got
the judicial branch doesn't have any courts to determine what tariffs and stuff. That's all congressional and executive authorities. Those goes back and forth.
That's what I thought.
Know what? And we have this Federal Reserve that's detached from the government, and it's a shame.
You want to hear something wild? I don't think that's constitutional either.
Yeah, I know. They should be brought in at least underneath the Commerce Department or somebody, because they need to coordinate this. These artificially high federal interest rates are causing, we have the tariffs to make a wall so that we're not inundated by imports. So we need investors to start investing in this country. And they can't invest in this country. They won't. They're not willing to if the tariff.
I think your point is also we can't have unelected judges and unelected Federal Reserve Board members controlling the economy.
Yeah, exactly
and we can't.
Right.
And you're right.
Yeah, it's got to go through Congress. And if Congress tells the president no, then then the president can decide, hey, I'm the executive authority. I'm going to do it anyway.
They can fight over separation of powers, whether it's a foreign policy issue or purely a commerce issue. You're quite right. But what we have now is a Federal Reserve that's unelected, not representative of anybody or anything, in its so-called independent entity. And I have a problem with some of these, if not all, of these independent entities as a constitutional matter. I just do. And I don't just do. I do for good reason. And these courts really substituting their decision, all that court had to say is, we don't think the president has this power, but it's not our job to make the decision. It's going to be up to Congress. There is a body that can address it. And even if Congress does address it statutorily, there could be an Article 2 constitutional issue because the president has broad powers to manage foreign policy. That's all this court had to do. That's all it had to do.
And if Powell can lower the interest rates, we'd have a ton of investment in this country. We'd have jobs.
I think so.
We'd have affordable housing.
And people need homes, and they're making it very difficult.
Please, Mr. Powell, please, drop it for the sake of our country. We need it, I don't know who would be holding up these works, but we need to have our own ability to create our own wealth so that we can, supply ourselves without being dependent on some foreign entities and stuff. Because if we don't have independence where we can do our own stuff and we have our own jobs and we have our own lives we're going to be owned and controlled by somebody.
All right, Blake, great call, brother. Great call. Appreciate you. Let's go to Dick in Dayton, Ohio on XM Satellite. Go right ahead, please.
Hey, Mark, I was telling your producer, I've been in the news here all the time, but that is so terrible what happened in Minneapolis. It's just going all the time, Mark, and I'm just saying, it's just, if you have a family, say you had, take the kids or so, you would be scared like to go to Disney World or say like maybe Cedar Point or something, but it's just that to me you have to have the justice. The justice system has not been there, and it's just this is a terrible thing. And
look, let me tell you something, Dick. This weekend, many people are going to be murdered in our cities. In Chicago and Detroit and Philadelphia and L.A. and New York, the accumulation will be terrible. Terrible. And the number of people who die is significant in this country. I think it's 16,000 a year, give or take. Something like that. And by the way, not all from guns. Almost none from rifles, by the way. And you're also going to have, horribly, about 40,000 people are going to die this year from automobile accidents. You have to live your life. What we need to do is give law enforcement our full support. Stop undermining them. What we need to do is have real judges who will throw the book at criminals. We need to have laws on the books that are going to be enforced. They talk about reforming law enforcement. They're not talking about reforming it. They're talking about weakening it. And enough is enough. And I truly mean that. Thank you for your call, my friend. Appreciate it. All right, we'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Two more Israeli hostages, including October 7 hero found dead in Gaza. The idea of the hostages, the reality of the hostages, hostages alive, hostages dead, it almost seems like the media are bored with the topic. It seems like the media are bored with the topic. Maybe a lot of people are bored with the topic, but it is unbelievable to me. This goes on. This is from the New York Post. The remains of two more Israeli hostages have been recovered. The body of October 7 hero Ian Weiss, 56, was found alongside the remains of another hostage who is yet to be identified. I mean, the idea that all these hostages are taken, that they're tortured and raped and murdered and starved to death is just unbelievable. They were recovered during a joint military and Shin Bet security operation in the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Netanyahu had called Weiss a hero for the way he sacrificed himself while trying to defend his family and neighbors when Hamas terrorists stormed the kibbutz. His wife, Cherie, and daughter, Noga, were taken captive by Hamas but released in November 2023 during the first week-long ceasefire. The IDF now believes Weiss was murdered and kidnapped by Hamas during the October 7 massacre. Ian showed courage and noble spirit when he fought the terrorists on that dark day, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said. In his death, he gave life, and ever since, his family has shown extraordinary strength in their struggle for his return. There are now 48 hostages remaining in Gaza, including 20 still believed to be alive. But you have to wonder, the video of that hostage who was all bone and skin and was forced to dig his own grave, you have to wonder if some of these people are still alive, quite frankly. Netanyahu vowed, "We will not rest or be silent until we return all of our kidnapped people home." Boy, that's a tough job being the Prime Minister of Israel, I can tell you that. You can see it, how difficult it is. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday evening. It's the end of the week. Labor Day weekend is ahead. And every Friday in your honor, here we go. The week has officially finished, and the weekend officially begins now. Happy Labor Day weekend. And we'll see you on Fox tomorrow night, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Set your DVR. Don't forget, grab your copy of On Power if you're out and about. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine, the men and women in Israel. Good night, Spritey and Griffey. Good night, Pepsi and Zelda. Good night, Smokey and Gigi and Indy. And good night, Patton and Rory and Marty and Barney. Good night, Dad. Good night, Mom. Good night, Leo. Good night, Bernie. Good night, Joe. Good night, Teddy. Good night, Lou. And America, have a wonderful weekend. Hope you can relax and have some fun. We will be back on Tuesday, but I will see you tomorrow on Fox. God bless.